What if reality is not hiding the truth from you, but protecting you from it? There is a strange comfort in believing the world is exactly what it appears to be. A room is a room, a mirror is a mirror, a thought is only a thought. You wake up, move through the day, speak your name, trust your memories, and call it life. But sometimes, in the quietest moments, something feels slightly wrong. Not broken, not dangerous, just incomplete. As if the world has a second layer beneath it. As if everything you see is only the surface of something deeper, something silent, something that does not want to be noticed too quickly. Tonight, we are going to move slowly toward that hidden layer. Not to escape reality, but to understand why reality may have been shaped in a way your mind can survive. Because maybe the truth about reality was never forbidden. Maybe it was simply too heavy to carry all at once. The world that exists only when it is simplified. Reality feels solid because your mind makes it smaller. This is the first strange truth. The world you experience is not the full world. It is a reduced version, a softened version, a version carefully shaped so you can move through it without collapsing under too much information. Right now, there are countless things happening around you that you are not noticing. The slight pressure of air against your skin, the distant hum behind silence, the weight of your own tongue resting in your mouth, the edges of objects in your vision that your eyes technically receive, but your awareness quietly ignores. And this is not a mistake, it is survival. Your mind does not show you everything. It chooses, it edits, it removes, it simplifies. Then it hands you the result and says, "This is reality." But is it? If your mind is constantly filtering the world before you experience it, then what are you actually living inside? The answer is unsettling, but also strangely peaceful. You are not living inside reality exactly as it is. You are living inside a version of reality that your mind can understand. Think of standing in front of the ocean at night. You see darkness, waves, moonlight, motion, but beneath that surface, there are currents, creatures, pressure, temperature, minerals, vibrations, microscopic life, and depths your eyes cannot enter. The ocean you see is real, but it is not complete. Reality is like that ocean. Your mind gives you the moonlit surface because the entire depth would be too much. This creates the paradox. The world feels real because it is simplified, but because it is simplified, it is never fully real to you. The same filter that allows you to live also prevents you from seeing the whole truth. And maybe that is why reality sometimes feels strange when you stare at it for too long. Look at your own hand for more than a few seconds. At first it is ordinary, then something shifts. The fingers look almost unfamiliar. The skin becomes a surface. The movement feels automatic. You may suddenly wonder, how is this mine? That question appears because, for a brief moment, the simplification weakens. You stop seeing my hand and begin seeing a strange living structure attached to awareness. The label disappears. The mystery returns. The mind depends on labels to keep reality calm. Chair, wall, face, sky, body, self. These words are not the things themselves. They are shortcuts. They are little sleeping pills for the unknown. A chair is not just a chair. It is wood, atoms, history, design, pressure, space, memory, usefulness and perception. But your mind cannot treat every chair like a cosmic event, so it compresses all of that into one simple word, chair. And suddenly the mystery becomes furniture. This is how the world becomes manageable. But here is the deeper question. If reality must be simplified before you can experience it, then is the truth too large for the human mind? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clear. Yes, but not in a hopeless way. The truth may be too large to experience all at once, but not too large to approach slowly. This is why deep thought feels like peeling layers. You do not destroy reality by questioning it. You allow it to become less flat. You let the ordinary become strange again. The danger is not that your mind simplifies reality. The danger is forgetting that it does. When you forget the filter, you mistake the surface for the whole ocean. You believe your fear is the full truth. You believe your memories are perfect records. You believe your identity is fixed. You believe the world is exactly as it appears in one tired moment. But the world is always more than your current perception. This can be frightening because it means you never fully possess reality. But it can also be freeing because it means no painful moment is complete either. No fear shows you everything. No sadness tells the whole story. No single thought contains the full shape of your life. Your mind simplifies the world, yes, but it also simplifies your suffering. And sometimes peace begins when you remember that what you are feeling is real, but it is not the whole reality. So maybe the truth you were never meant to know is not that reality is fake. Maybe the truth is that reality is too full, too wide, too layered, too alive. And your mind, like a quiet guardian, dims the lights so you can walk through it without being blinded. The world you see is not the entire world. It is the doorway. And tonight we are standing at the doorway, listening to what waits beyond it. The mirror that hides the observer. There is something strange about looking into a mirror for too long. At first it feels simple. You see your face, familiar, recognizable, safe. It confirms what you already believe, that you exist, that you have a shape, that you are someone. But if you stay there, if you keep looking without distraction, something begins to shift. The face in the mirror starts to feel slightly distant, not wrong, just not fully you. And then a quiet question appears. If that is me, then who is the one looking? This is where the paradox begins. A mirror shows you everything about your appearance, but nothing about the one who is actually aware of that appearance. It reflects your eyes, but it cannot reflect the one behind the eyes. It shows your expressions, but not the one experiencing them. It gives you your image, but hides the observer. You may feel like you know who you are because you can see yourself, but what you are seeing is only the outside, a surface, a structure, a visual identity shaped by light and angles. The real question is not what you look like. The real question is, what is doing the looking? If you try to find it, something strange happens. Close your eyes for a moment. Forget the mirror. Forget the room. Just notice that you are aware. There are thoughts, maybe faint sounds, maybe a sense of your body. But more importantly, there is awareness itself, the quiet presence that notices all of this. Now ask yourself gently, where is that awareness located? Is it behind your eyes? Inside your head? Somewhere in your chest? You might feel like it must be somewhere, but when you try to point to it directly, it slips away. You can feel sensations, you can notice thoughts, but the one noticing them remains invisible. This is the paradox. Everything you can observe is not you. It is something you are aware of. Your face in the mirror is observed. Your thoughts are observed. Your emotions are observed. Even your sense of identity, your name, your story, your memories can be observed. So if all of these things can be seen, then what is the one that cannot be seen? At first, this question feels unsettling. It feels like something is missing, like there should be a clear answer, a solid center, a definable self that you can hold on to. But there isn't, and that is not a flaw, it is the truth. The observer cannot be seen because it is not an object, it is not a thing within reality. It is the space in which reality appears. The mirror shows you objects, shapes, colors, reflections, but awareness is not a shape, it has no color. It cannot be reflected because it is the condition that allows reflection to be experienced in the first place. It is like trying to see your own eyes without using a mirror. You can see everything else, but not the one doing the seeing. And yet, you know it is there. You know you are aware. This creates a quiet tension. You exist, but you cannot find yourself as an object. You are present, but you cannot step outside of yourself to confirm it in the way you confirm everything else. And this leads to the deeper question. If you cannot see the observer, does it truly exist? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Yes, but not in the way you expect. The observer does not exist as a thing. It exists as a process, a continuous, silent witnessing. It is not something you have, it is something you are. You are not the face in the mirror. You are the awareness seeing the face, and this changes everything. Because it means your identity is not limited to your appearance. It is not fixed in your thoughts. It is not trapped in your past. All of those are reflections, moving, changing, temporary, but the awareness behind them remains. It does not age the way your body does. It does not change the way your emotions do. It simply observes, always present, always silent. And this is why the mirror feels strange when you look too long. At first, you believe it is showing you who you are, but slowly you begin to sense that it is only showing you what you are not. The reflection is not the observer. The image is not the awareness. The face is not the self. And once you see this, even slightly, something shifts inside you. You stop clinging so tightly to the reflection. You begin to understand that the things you see, even your own identity, are part of the surface layer of reality. Useful, real, but not complete. The deeper truth is quieter. You cannot see yourself the way you see the world, because you are the one the world appears to. The mirror hides the observer, not because it is broken, but because the observer was never meant to be seen. It was meant to be the one who sees. And maybe that is why the truth about reality feels so distant. Not because it is hidden somewhere far away, but because it is the one thing that has been looking through your eyes this entire time. The thought that feels like it belongs to you. There is a quiet assumption you carry every day without noticing it. The thought you are thinking feels like yours. It appears in your mind, in your voice, shaped by your memories, your language, your experiences. It feels personal. It feels owned. It feels like something you created. But if you slow down and watch closely, something begins to feel slightly off. Because thoughts do not ask permission before they arrive. They simply appear. Right now, without trying, a thought is forming. Maybe about these words. Maybe about something else entirely. Maybe about what you will do next. Maybe about something that happened long ago. You did not choose it in advance. It just came. And this creates the paradox. If thoughts feel like they belong to you, but you do not choose them before they appear, then where do they come from? Are you creating them, or are you receiving them? At first it seems obvious. Of course you are creating them. They are inside your mind. They use your voice. They respond to your life. But look a little deeper. Try this. For the next few seconds, decide what your next thought will be before it happens, not after it appears, not while it is forming. Before. Pause. Wait. And notice what happens. You may feel a strange silence, a small gap, and then, suddenly, a thought appears. But did you truly create it, or did you simply notice it arriving? This is where the illusion begins to soften. Thoughts feel personal because they happen inside you. But happening inside something does not mean being controlled by it. A cloud passes through the sky, but the sky does not create the cloud. In the same way, thoughts pass through awareness, but awareness does not always create them intentionally. They emerge from somewhere deeper, from memory, from pattern, from unconscious processes you are not directly aware of. Your brain is constantly working, connecting, predicting, recalling, shaping ideas before you ever notice them. By the time a thought reaches your awareness, it is already complete. You are meeting it at the end of its journey, not the beginning. And yet, when it arrives, it wears your voice. It carries your identity. It feels like something you decided. This is why it feels like it belongs to you. But does it? If a thought appears without your permission, can you truly call it yours? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Yes and no. A thought belongs to you in the sense that it arises within your mind, shaped by your life, your experiences, your internal patterns. It is connected to you. But it is not controlled by you in the way you imagine. You are not sitting somewhere inside your mind, carefully crafting each thought before releasing it. There is no small version of you writing sentences in advance. There is only a process unfolding, automatic, complex, mostly hidden, and you are the one who becomes aware of the result. This realization can feel unsettling at first, because it raises another quiet question. If you are not choosing your thoughts before they appear, then what exactly are you controlling? But stay with it. Notice something important. Even if you do not choose the arrival of a thought, you do have a relationship with it after it appears. You can follow it, you can question it, you can let it pass. This is where your freedom lives, not in creating every thought, but in how you respond to the ones that arise. A thought may say something negative, something repetitive, something uncomfortable, and it may feel like it defines you in that moment, but it does not, because the thought is an event, not an identity. It is something happening, not something you are. The illusion is that because a thought uses your voice, it must be you. But the truth is quieter. You are the one hearing the voice. And once you begin to see this, even slightly, something shifts. Thoughts lose a little of their weight. They become less absolute, less controlling. You start to notice that they come and go, like waves, like echoes, like patterns repeating themselves. You are still thinking, but you are no longer completely inside the thinking. This creates a gentle distance, not separation, but space. And in that space, something calm begins to appear. Because if every thought is not fully you, then you do not have to believe every thought completely. You do not have to follow every idea to its end. You do not have to treat every mental voice as truth. You can listen without becoming it. And this is where the paradox resolves. The thought feels like it belongs to you because it arises within your mind and carries your identity. But it does not define you because you are not the thought. You are the awareness that notices it. The thought is a visitor. You are the space it visits. And when you begin to understand this, the mind becomes quieter, not because thoughts stop, but because they lose the power to control you completely. They pass through, and you remain, still, aware, present. The thought that feels like it belongs to you was never fully yours to begin with. It was only passing through the place you call me, the reality that changes when you notice it. There is something subtle that happens the moment you pay attention to anything. It changes, not dramatically, not in a way that breaks the world, but quietly, almost invisibly. The act of noticing something begins to reshape the thing itself. At first, this sounds impossible. Reality should exist on its own, independent, stable, unaffected by whether you are looking at it or not. A wall does not move because you notice it. A sound does not change because you listen to it, or does it? Sit in a quiet room and listen to the silence. At first, it feels empty, but the longer you listen, the more it fills. Tiny sounds begin to appear. A distant hum, a faint vibration, the subtle rhythm of your own breath. Were those sounds always there? Yes, but they did not exist in your reality until you noticed them. This is the beginning of the paradox. Reality, as you experience it, is not just what exists, it is what you notice. There is a difference, because what you do not notice might as well not exist for you in that moment. Your awareness acts like a light in a dark room. Wherever it points, things become real, detailed, present. Wherever it does not reach, things fade into the background, undefined, almost invisible. But here is where it becomes deeper. The act of noticing does not just reveal reality, it transforms it. Think about your own emotions. If you feel slightly anxious and ignore it, it remains vague, almost hidden. But if you turn your attention toward it, if you notice it clearly, something shifts. It may grow stronger, or sometimes it softens and begins to dissolve. In both cases, your attention has changed it. The same is true for thoughts. A passing thought can disappear quickly if you ignore it, but the moment you focus on it, examine it, follow it, it expands. It becomes more detailed, more real. It pulls you deeper into its world. Your attention feeds it. This creates a strange loop. You notice something, and that noticing gives it more presence, which makes you notice it even more. And slowly, what you focus on begins to feel like the entire reality. But is it? If your attention shapes what feels real, then reality is not just something you observe. It is something you participate in. This idea has echoes even in the way science understands the smallest parts of the universe. In the world of the observer effect, certain measurements seem to influence the outcome of what is being observed. The act of observation is not completely separate from the event itself. Even at the deepest levels, the line between observer and observed begins to blur, but you do not need physics to feel this truth. You can experience it directly. Right now, bring your attention to your breathing. Before you noticed it, your breath was happening automatically, unnoticed, uncontrolled. But now, as you observe it, something changes. The rhythm shifts. It becomes more deliberate, more visible. Your attention has entered the process, and the process responds. This leads to the central question of the paradox. If reality changes when you notice it, then what is reality when you are not noticing anything? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Reality exists, but your experience of reality is always shaped by your awareness. There is a vast world unfolding at all times, but you only live inside the part you illuminate. And because your attention is always moving, your reality is always shifting with it. This is why two people can exist in the same place and experience completely different worlds. One notices beauty, another notices problems. One focuses on opportunity, another on fear. The environment is the same, but the reality they live inside feels entirely different. Because attention selects, enhances, and organizes what is experienced. This does not mean reality is fake. It means reality as you know it is interactive. It responds to your focus. And this can feel unsettling because it suggests that what feels most real to you might simply be what you have been noticing the most. But it can also be deeply freeing. Because if attention shapes experience, then you are not completely trapped inside a fixed version of reality. You can shift what you notice. You can gently redirect your awareness, not to escape truth, but to see more of it. Because the problem is not that reality changes when you notice it. The problem is that you often notice only one small part of it and mistake that part for the whole. When fear appears, it feels like everything. When sadness appears, it feels like the entire world has changed. But these are movements within reality, not the full structure of it. Your attention has zoomed in, and zooming in makes anything feel larger. So the quiet resolution of this paradox is simple but powerful. Reality is not a fixed picture you are looking at. It is a living field you are interacting with, and your awareness is the bridge. What you notice grows clearer. What you ignore fades away. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that reality is unstable, but that your experience of it is constantly being shaped by where you place your attention. The world is always more than what you are seeing right now, always wider, always deeper, but you only live inside the part you choose to notice. And maybe, just maybe, the reality that feels overwhelming is not the entire truth. It is only the part you have been looking at for too long. The self that is always one step behind. There is a quiet delay inside you that you almost never notice. It is small, subtle, invisible most of the time, but it is always there. The feeling that you are fully present, fully in control, fully aware of yourself in each moment is not entirely true. Because by the time you become aware of anything, it has already happened. A sound reaches your ears, a sensation touches your skin, a thought appears in your mind, and only after it has already occurred do you become aware of it. There is always a gap, a tiny, almost undetectable gap between the event and your awareness of the event. This creates the paradox. You feel like you are living in the present moment, but your awareness is always arriving just after it, like a shadow following something that has already moved. Think about something simple. You decide to move your hand. It feels immediate, direct, as if the moment you choose, the action happens. But look closer. The brain begins preparing the movement before you become aware of the decision. Signals are sent, muscles begin to respond, and then, a fraction of a second later, the feeling of, "I decided to move," appears in your awareness. Your awareness tells the story after the action has already begun. So the question appears quietly. Are you truly making decisions in the moment, or are you becoming aware of decisions that have already started? At first, this feels unsettling, because it suggests that the self you experience, the one who feels in control, who believes it is choosing in real time, might not be leading the process. It might be following it, always one step behind. But stay with this feeling, because something deeper begins to reveal itself. Imagine watching a movie. The scenes unfold one after another, and your mind builds a continuous story. It feels smooth, immediate, connected. But in reality, what you are seeing is a sequence of frames, still images shown in rapid order. Your awareness works in a similar way. It stitches together moments that have already happened and presents them as a flowing present. But that present is slightly delayed. Not enough to disrupt your life, but enough to create an illusion. The illusion that you are exactly at the center of every moment as it unfolds, when in truth you are experiencing the moment just after it begins. This leads to the deeper question. If your awareness is always one step behind, then where is the real present? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. The present exists, but it is not something your awareness can fully capture, because the act of becoming aware takes time, even if that time is incredibly small. Awareness is not the moment itself. It is the recognition of the moment, and recognition always comes after. This means the self you feel, the one narrating your life, thinking your thoughts, making sense of your actions, is not the origin of everything you do. It is the interpreter, the storyteller, the one who arrives just after the event and says, "This is what is happening, this is what I chose, this is who I am." And because this happens so quickly, so smoothly, you never notice the delay. It feels like control. It feels like identity. It feels like you. But something deeper is always moving ahead. This does not mean you are powerless. It does not mean your life is out of your hands. It means your sense of self is not where you thought it was. It is not the first cause. It is the reflection. And reflections always come after the object. This can feel unsettling at first, because it loosens the grip of certainty. If you are not exactly at the front of your own experience, then what are you? The answer is quieter than you expect. You are not just the self that narrates. You are also the deeper process that unfolds before narration begins. The body moves, the brain processes, the world interacts, and then awareness arrives and gathers it all into a story. Both are part of you, but the part you usually identify with, the thinking, narrating self, is slightly behind the flow, always catching up, always explaining, always trying to feel like it is in control of something that is already in motion. And once you see this, even slightly, something softens. You stop demanding that every moment be perfectly controlled. You stop believing that every thought must be chosen. You begin to notice life unfolding more naturally, more fluidly, because the pressure to be the origin of everything fades. You are not late to your own life. You are simply experiencing it from a place that arrives just after it begins. And that is enough. In fact, that is exactly how it was meant to be. Because if awareness were perfectly synchronized with every event, there would be no space for reflection, no room for understanding, no ability to notice anything at all. The small delay is what allows experience to exist. It creates the gap where awareness can appear, where meaning can form, where you can say, "I am here," even if that here is always just behind the edge of now. So the paradox resolves like this. The self feels like it is in control, but it is actually interpreting events that have already begun. It feels like it is fully present, but it is always arriving just after the present unfolds. And yet, this does not make your experience false. It makes it possible. The self that is always one step behind is the very thing that allows you to witness your life at all. The memory that rewrites the past. Nature is a quiet assumption you rarely question. Your memories feel like records, like stored moments from the past, preserved somewhere inside you, waiting to be replayed exactly as they happened. A conversation, a place, a feeling. You return to it, and it feels real, familiar, yours. But something strange is happening every time you remember. You are not retrieving the past, you are recreating it. This is where the paradox begins. A memory feels like something fixed, but it changes every time you visit it. Think about a moment from your past, something clear, something you feel certain about. Now notice how it appears, not as a perfect recording, but as fragments, images, impressions, a feeling attached to a story. There are gaps your mind fills without asking. Details you are confident about, even though you never questioned them. And here is the unsettling part. Each time you remember that moment, you are not opening a file, you are rebuilding it. The brain does not store memories like a camera stores video. It stores pieces, sensations, emotions, meanings, and then reconstructs them into a story when you recall them. And during that reconstruction, something changes, subtly, quietly, continuously. New emotions blend into old memories. Current beliefs reshape past interpretations. Even small details can shift without you noticing. So the question appears gently. If your memory keeps changing, then what is the past really like? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. The past, as it happened, is gone. What remains is not the event itself, but your current version of it. This can feel unsettling at first, because it means the certainty you feel about your past is not as solid as it seems. The story you tell yourself about who you were, what happened, what it meant, is not fixed. It is alive, it evolves, and yet this is not a flaw, it is a function. Your mind does not preserve the past perfectly because its goal is not accuracy, its goal is meaning. A perfectly accurate memory might not serve you. It might overwhelm you with detail or trap you in moments that no longer help you move forward. So instead, your mind reshapes the past into something usable, something that fits your current understanding of yourself and the world. But this creates a quiet distortion, because what feels like truth is often interpretation, and interpretation changes. Think about a moment that once felt painful. At the time, it may have seemed overwhelming, defining, impossible to escape. But years later, when you remember it, the feeling is different, softer, distant, maybe even meaningful in a way it was not before. Did the past change? No, but your memory of it did. The emotional tone shifts, the details rearrange themselves, the meaning evolves, and slowly the same event becomes a different experience. This is the paradox. The past feels fixed, but your access to it is constantly changing. And because you only know the past through memory, the past you live with is never completely stable. It is rewritten again and again, each time you remember. This leads to a deeper question. If your past is always being rewritten, then who are you really? Are you the person defined by what actually happened, or by the version of it you remember now? The answer is quieter than you expect. You are shaped more by the story you carry than the event itself, because the event no longer exists. Only the memory remains, and the memory is alive. It adapts, it shifts, it reflects who you are becoming, not just who you were. This can feel uncomfortable because it removes the idea of a perfectly stable identity built on fixed experiences. But it can also be deeply freeing, because if memory can change, then your relationship with your past can change too. You are not trapped inside a single version of your history. You are not forced to carry every moment in its original weight. The mind allows reinterpretation, not as a lie, but as a form of growth. A painful memory can soften. A confusing moment can become clear. A regret can turn into understanding. And this does not mean the past is being erased. It means your connection to it is evolving. The danger is not that memory changes. The danger is believing that your current version is absolute. Because when you believe your memory is perfect, you stop questioning it. You stop allowing new meaning to form. You become fixed inside a story that was never truly fixed to begin with. But when you see memory for what it is, a reconstruction, not a recording, something shifts. You hold your past more gently. You recognize that what you remember is real in feeling, but flexible in form. You understand that the story can change, and in that understanding, a quiet freedom appears. You are not only the result of your past, you are also the interpreter of it. And interpretation is never final. So the paradox resolves like this. Memory feels like a window into the past, but it is actually a mirror reflecting your present understanding. Each time you look, the reflection shifts slightly. Not enough to break the illusion, but enough to keep the story alive. The memory that rewrites the past is not deceiving you. It is reshaping you. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that your past is false, but that it is never fully finished. The time that moves only in one direction. Time feels like the most certain thing you know. It moves forward, always forward, from past to present to future. You remember yesterday, you live today, and you imagine tomorrow. This flow feels natural, unquestionable, almost built into reality itself. But if you slow down and observe carefully, something begins to feel strange. Because you never actually experience time moving, you only experience moments appearing. Right now, there is only this moment, not the past, not the future, just this quiet, unfolding present. And yet, within this present, there is a strong sense that something has passed and something is coming. But where are they? The past exists only as memory. The future exists only as imagination. Both are thoughts happening now. So the paradox begins. If you only ever experience the present, why does time feel like it is moving? Think about a simple experience. You listen to a piece of music, a melody unfolds, note by note. You feel the passage of time because the notes seem to move forward. One fades, another arrives. The sequence creates motion, but in reality, you are only hearing one note at a time. The feeling of movement is created by memory holding the previous note and anticipation waiting for the next. Without memory, there would be no sense of past. Without expectation, there would be no sense of future. Time, as you feel it, is built inside your mind, not as an illusion, but as a structure, a way to organize experience. This leads to a deeper question. If time feels like it flows forward, but you only ever live in the present, then what is actually moving? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. It is not time that moves. It is your awareness that moves through change. Events change, the world shifts, your body evolves, and your mind arranges these changes into a sequence, a story with direction, past to future, beginning to end. But this direction is something you experience, not something you directly observe outside of perception. Because you never step outside the present to watch time itself flowing, you only notice that things are different from how they were. A moment ago, these words were not here. Now they are. That difference creates the feeling of movement. But notice something deeper. The past is not behind you in space. You cannot walk back to yesterday. You cannot turn around and see last year sitting somewhere in the distance. It does not exist as a place. It exists as a memory appearing now. And the future is not ahead of you like a road you can see stretching forward. It exists as imagination also appearing now. So both past and future are experiences happening in the present. And yet, you feel like you are moving through them. This is the paradox. Time feels like a river carrying you forward, but you never leave the present moment. You remain here while everything else changes. This can feel unsettling at first. because it challenges the idea that you are traveling through time. Instead, it suggests that time is something appearing within your experience, not something you are physically moving through. But stay with it, because something calming begins to emerge. If you are always in the present, then there is nowhere else you need to reach to be fully here. You are already at the only place where life actually happens. The past cannot trap you physically, because it only exists as memory now. The future cannot overwhelm you physically, because it only exists as imagination now. Everything you ever experience happens in this single, continuous present. And this is why time feels both real and strangely untouchable. You cannot hold it, you cannot stop it. You cannot speed it up or slow it down directly. But you can change how you experience it. Moments of fear feel long. Moments of peace feel soft and open. Moments of distraction disappear quickly. Moments of awareness feel deeper, fuller, almost timeless. Time stretches and compresses depending on your state of mind, which means the flow of time is not entirely external. It is also internal, shaped by attention, by emotion, by awareness. This leads to the quiet resolution of the paradox. Time appears to move in one direction because your mind organizes change into a forward-moving story. But in direct experience, there is only the present continuously renewing itself. Nothing is actually moving through time. Everything is simply changing here, and your awareness is witnessing that change. The sense of forward is something you feel, not something you see. And once you begin to notice this, even slightly, something shifts inside you. The pressure of time softens. The fear of running out becomes quieter, because you realize that life is not a race through time. It is an unfolding within the present, moment by moment, breath by breath, always here. So the paradox resolves like this. Time feels like a one-way path you are traveling along, but in truth, you never leave the present moment. You are not moving through time. Time is appearing within your experience of change. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that time is an illusion, but that it is not what you thought it was. It is not a road. It is a story your mind tells to make change feel like movement. And you are always here, at the only point where that story can ever be experienced. The control you feel but do not have. There is a quiet belief that sits at the center of your life, the feeling that you are in control. You choose what to say, you decide what to do. You move your body when you want. You think your thoughts, make your plans, shape your future. It feels direct, immediate, certain. But if you slow down and watch closely, something begins to feel slightly uncertain, because control does not appear where you expect it to. Try something simple. Decide to raise your hand. Before the movement happens, there is a moment where you feel the intention, the sense that you are about to act. It feels like you created that intention. It feels like it came from you. But look closer. Did you choose the intention, or did it appear? Did you sit somewhere inside your mind and decide, now I will have the thought to raise my hand? Or did the thought arise, and then the action followed? This is where the paradox begins. Control feels real, but when you try to find its exact origin, it becomes unclear. Your body moves, but the signals begin before you are aware of them. Your thoughts appear, but you do not create them in advance. Your emotions rise, often without permission. And yet, through all of this, there is a strong feeling. I am doing this. So the question quietly forms. If actions begin before you are aware of them, then what exactly are you controlling? At first, This feels unsettling because it suggests that the sense of control might not be as complete as it seems, that the you who feels in charge may not be the one initiating everything. But stay with the feeling, because something deeper begins to reveal itself. Imagine standing beside a river. The water flows continuously, shaping its path, responding to the land, moving without asking. You do not control the river, but if you step into it, you can influence how you move within it. You can swim, float, resist, or follow. Your mind works in a similar way. Thoughts, impulses, and emotions flow like currents. They arise from processes beneath your awareness, patterns built over time, influenced by memory, biology, environment, and experience. You do not create each current, but you are not completely powerless within them either. This is where the feeling of control comes from. Not from creating every thought or action, but from interacting with what arises. You cannot stop a thought from appearing, but you can choose whether to follow it. You cannot prevent an emotion from forming, but you can decide how you respond to it. This creates a quieter form of control, not absolute, but relational. And this leads to the deeper question. If you are not fully in control of what arises, but you can influence what happens next, then where does control truly exist? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Control is not located at the beginning of experience. It exists in the space after something appears, between impulse and action, between thought and belief, between emotion and response. It is subtle, often overlooked, but it is real. The illusion is that control means creating everything from nothing. The truth is that control is the ability to relate to what is already happening. You are not the source of every thought, but you are the one who can notice it. You are not the origin of every feeling, but you are the one who can hold it, question it, soften it. And in that space of noticing, something powerful exists. Choice. Not the kind of choice that creates reality from scratch, but the kind that shapes how reality unfolds through you. This is why the feeling of control is so convincing. Because part of it is true. You are involved. You are participating. You are influencing the flow. But you are not the sole creator of every moment. And once you see this, even slightly, something shifts. The pressure to control everything begins to loosen. You stop fighting every thought, every emotion, every outcome, because you realize you were never meant to control all of it, only to meet it, to respond to it, to move with it, rather than against it. This does not make you weak, it makes you aligned. Because when you stop trying to control what cannot be controlled, your energy returns to what can be shaped, your attention, your response, your awareness. And in that space, a quieter, more stable form of control begins to emerge. Not forceful, not rigid, but present, flexible, alive. So the paradox resolves like this. You feel like you are in control of everything, but most things arise before you can control them. And yet, you are not without control, because true control is not about creating every moment. It is about how you meet the moment that is already here. The control you feel but do not have is not completely false. It is simply misunderstood. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that you have no control, but that your control lives in a place you rarely look. Not at the beginning of action, but in the quiet space just before you respond. The choice that was made before you knew it. There is a moment you believe you understand completely. The moment of choice. You stand between two options. You think, you weigh, you decide. And then, quietly, you feel it. I chose this. It feels clear, personal, yours. But if you slow down and look closer, something begins to feel slightly out of place, because the choice seems to appear before you fully know it. Think about the last small decision you made. Not a big one, just something simple. Choosing a word, moving your hand, continuing to listen. It feels like you decided it in that moment. But ask yourself gently, did you see the choice being created, or did you only become aware of it once it was already there? This is where the paradox begins. A choice feels like something you actively make, but when you try to observe the exact moment it forms, it is already complete by the time you notice it. Like a thought that finishes itself before you hear it. Like a sentence spoken before you realize you are about to speak. It appears, and then you say, I chose this. But where did it come from? If you try to trace it back, you find something deeper. Before the choice, there were influences, memories shaping your preferences, emotions guiding your direction, patterns built over years of experience, subtle tendencies you did not consciously design. All of these are moving beneath awareness, constantly shaping the next moment. And then, suddenly, a decision appears, fully formed, carrying your voice, feeling like yours. So the quiet question rises, if your choices are shaped before you become aware of them, then are you truly choosing? At first, this question can feel uncomfortable, because it seems to remove something important, the idea that you are the author of your life in a direct, immediate way. But stay with it, because something deeper begins to reveal itself. Imagine a wave forming in the ocean. It rises, curves, and breaks. From the surface, it looks like a single event, a clear shape, a defined movement. But that wave is not created in one moment. It is the result of countless factors: wind, depth, currents, distance, pressure, all combining into a single visible form. Your choices are like that wave. By the time you see them, they are already the result of many unseen forces. And yet, the wave still moves. It still shapes the water. It still exists. This leads to the deeper understanding. A choice is not created in the exact moment you become aware of it. It is the visible result of processes that were already unfolding. And you are part of those processes, not separate from them, not controlling each one directly, but also not completely outside of them. This is where the paradox begins to soften. Because the question is not whether you are choosing or not. The question is, what does choosing really mean? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Choosing is not about creating a decision from nothing in a single instant. It is about being the living system through which decisions emerge. You are not just the final moment of awareness that says, I chose this. You are also the deeper patterns, the experiences, the tendencies, the silent movements that shape that choice before it appears. The choice feels like it arrives before you know it, because the you that becomes aware is only one layer of a much larger process. And that process is still you. This realization can feel unsettling at first, because it removes the idea of a single fixed controller sitting inside your mind, making every decision in real time. But it also reveals something more accurate. You are not a point of control. You are a flow, a continuous unfolding of influences, patterns, awareness, and response. And within that flow, choices arise, naturally, quietly, without needing to be forced into existence. This does not mean you are powerless. It means your power is distributed. It exists in how your patterns are shaped over time, in how your attention influences those patterns, in how your awareness relates to what arises. You may not choose the exact moment a decision appears, but you influence the kind of decisions that tend to appear. And that influence is subtle, slow, and real, like guiding the direction of a river, not stopping its flow. And once you begin to see this, something shifts. You stop trying to control every decision at the exact moment it happens, because you realize that moment is already the surface of something deeper. Instead, you begin to understand the quiet processes beneath it. You become more aware of your tendencies, more gentle with your patterns, more intentional with where you place your attention. And slowly, the nature of your choices begins to change. Not instantly, but gradually, because the system itself is evolving. So the paradox resolves like this. A choice feels like something you make in the moment, but it is often formed before you become aware of it. And yet, that does not mean it is not yours, because you are not just the awareness that notices the choice. You are the entire process that allowed it to emerge. The choice that was made before you knew it was still shaped by you, just not by the part of you you usually identify with. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that you have no choice, but that your choices are deeper, quieter, and more complex than they appear. They begin long before you say, "I decided." The reality that exists without meaning. There is a quiet layer beneath everything you experience. A layer so simple, so neutral, that the mind rarely stays with it for long. Because the mind is always searching for meaning. It wants to understand, to label, to explain, to turn every moment into something that fits a story, something that makes sense. But if you pause and look at reality before the story begins, something strange appears. It has no meaning at all. Right now, there are colors in your vision, shapes, sounds, sensations, the movement of breath, the weight of your body, the space around you. All of this is happening. But before you name it, before you interpret it, before you decide what it means, it is just there, unlabeled, silent, complete. This is where the paradox begins. Reality exists perfectly well without meaning, but your experience of reality feels incomplete without it. Think about something simple, a sound, maybe a distant noise, maybe a voice, maybe a small, quiet movement in the background. The moment you hear it, your mind asks, "What is that?" And then it answers, "It's a car, it's the wind, it's someone speaking." And suddenly, the raw sound becomes something familiar. It becomes meaningful. But before that interpretation, it was just vibration, pure experience, without identity, without explanation. And this is true for everything. A tree is not a tree until your mind calls it that. A face is not a person until your mind recognizes it. Even your own emotions are not sadness or fear until they are named. Before meaning, there is only experience. And experience by itself does not need to mean anything. This leads to a deeper question. If reality does not come with built-in meaning, then where does meaning come from? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Meaning is created, not by reality itself, but by the mind observing it. Your mind is constantly translating raw experience into something understandable. It builds connections, it creates stories, it assigns value, it decides what matters and what does not. And this is not a mistake. It is how you navigate the world. Without meaning, everything would feel empty, undefined, impossible to organize. But here is where it becomes deeper. Meaning feels like it is part of reality, but it is actually something you bring into it. This is why the same event can feel completely different to different people. One person sees opportunity, another sees danger, one sees beauty, another sees nothing at all. The reality is the same, but the meaning is different, because meaning is not fixed, it is interpreted. And this creates the paradox. Reality exists without meaning, but you cannot experience it without creating meaning. This can feel unsettling at first, because it suggests that the sense of purpose, importance, and understanding you feel is not built into the world itself. It is something you generate. But stay with it, because something surprisingly peaceful begins to appear. If meaning is not fixed, then you are not trapped inside a single interpretation. The way you see your life, your past, your struggles, your future can change. Not because reality changes, but because meaning does. A difficult moment can feel heavy, overwhelming, impossible, but over time, its meaning can soften. It can become something you learned from, something that shaped you, something that no longer defines you in the same way. The event remains, but the meaning evolves. And this is where quiet freedom exists. You are not only living inside reality, you are also shaping the meaning of it. And yet, there is another layer beneath even this, a deeper stillness. Because if you step back far enough, if you let go of the need to interpret for just a moment, reality is already complete without meaning. The breath moves, the body rests, the world continues, nothing is missing. Meaning is something added, not something required. And in that realization, something softens inside you, the pressure to understand everything, the need to explain every feeling, the urge to define every moment. It begins to loosen, because you begin to see that not everything needs to mean something in order to be real. Some moments can simply be experienced, quietly, fully, without being turned into a story. This does not remove meaning from your life. It gives you space from it. It allows meaning to exist without controlling everything. So the paradox resolves like this. Reality does not come with meaning attached, but your mind continuously creates meaning to understand it. And yet, beneath all interpretation, reality remains whole, complete, untouched by the stories placed upon it. The reality that exists without meaning is not empty. It is simply free. Free from labels, free from judgment, free from the need to be anything other than what it already is. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that life has no meaning, but that meaning is something you gently place onto a reality that never needed it to begin with. The identity that depends on others. There is a version of you that exists only in other people's minds. You cannot see it directly. You cannot fully control it. And yet, it quietly shapes how you understand yourself. Someone thinks you are kind. Someone else thinks you are distant. One person remembers you as strong. Another remembers you as uncertain. All of these versions exist at the same time, and none of them are exactly the same. This is where the paradox begins. You feel like a single, consistent self, but the you that exists in the world is constantly changing depending on who is looking. Think about how you appear to different people. With a close friend, you may feel open, relaxed, understood. With a stranger, you may feel quiet, reserved, almost hidden. With family, you may feel familiar, shaped by years of shared memory. In each case, you are still you, but the expression of that you shifts. And more importantly, the reflection you receive from others changes. Their reactions, their words, their expressions, they all act like mirrors. Not perfect mirrors, but distorted ones. Each person reflects a slightly different version of you back to yourself, and over time, without realizing it, you begin to collect these reflections. You begin to build an identity. I am this kind of person. I am seen this way. This is who I am. But where did that identity come from? Did it originate entirely within you, or was it shaped piece by piece by how others responded to you? This leads to the deeper question: if your identity is influenced by how others see you, then who are you when no one is looking? At first, this question feels uncomfortable because it removes something stable. If identity depends on others, then it feels fragile, changeable, uncertain. But stay with it, because something deeper begins to reveal itself. Imagine growing up in complete isolation, no language, no feedback, no reactions from others. Would you still have the same identity you have now? Would you still think of yourself in the same way? Probably not. Because much of what you call yourself is shaped through interaction, through being seen, through being responded to, through being reflected back. Your identity is not created in isolation. It is formed in relationship. This does not make it false. It makes it relational. And this is where the paradox deepens. You feel like your identity is something solid within you, but much of it exists between you and others. It is not just internal, it is co-created. This can feel unsettling because it means the way others see you has a real influence on how you see yourself. A repeated label can become a belief. A reaction can become a story. A moment can become part of your identity. But here is the quiet truth. The reflections you receive are not complete, they are partial, limited by the perspective of the person seeing you. No one sees all of you, not even you. And this is where the resolution begins. If your identity is shaped by others, but others only see parts of you, then your identity is never fully captured by any single reflection. You are always more than what is seen, always more than what is said, always more than what is remembered. The danger is not that identity depends on others. The danger is believing that any single version is the full truth. Because when you believe that, you begin to limit yourself to that reflection. You begin to act in ways that confirm it. You begin to hold on to it as if it is fixed. But it is not. It is fluid. Because the relationships that shape it are always changing. And once you begin to see this, even slightly, something shifts. You stop clinging so tightly to how you are perceived. You begin to understand that what others see is real, but incomplete. You allow space for yourself to change, to grow, to move beyond old reflections, and something quiet begins to emerge, a deeper sense of self, not based entirely on how others see you, but not completely separate from it either. A balance. You recognize the influence of others, but you do not let it define you entirely, because you begin to sense that there is something beneath all reflections, something that is present before identity is formed, something that remains even when no one is looking. Awareness. The same awareness that sees your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, also sees the versions of you that appear in the world. And that awareness is not limited to any single identity. It simply observes. And in that observation, something becomes clear. You are not only the identity shaped by others, you are also the space in which that identity appears and changes. So the paradox resolves like this. Your identity feels like something personal and internal, but it is deeply shaped by how others see and respond to you. And yet, no single reflection can define you completely, because you are always more than what is seen. The identity that depends on others is real, but it is not final. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that your identity is false, but that it is never fully fixed. It lives between you and the world, always forming, always shifting, always incomplete. And somewhere beneath all of it, you remain, unseen, unlabeled, present. The fear that protects an illusion. There is a kind of fear that does not come from danger. It comes from the possibility of seeing something differently, a quiet resistance, a subtle tension. The feeling that something should not be questioned too deeply, not looked at for too long, not understood too clearly. And when that feeling appears, it is often mistaken for protection. But protection of what? This is where the paradox begins. Fear feels like it is guarding you from something harmful, but sometimes it is guarding an idea that was never fully true. Think about a belief you have held for a long time, something about yourself, something about the world, something that feels certain, stable, unquestionable. I am this kind of person. This is how life works. This is what I can or cannot be. These beliefs create a structure, a sense of identity, a feeling of knowing where you stand. But what happens when something challenges that belief? A new perspective, a different experience, a quiet realization that does not fit the story you have been telling yourself. Often, before understanding appears, fear arrives. A tightening, a resistance, a subtle discomfort that says, "Don't go there." And it feels important. It feels protective. It feels like something inside you is trying to keep you safe. But safe from what? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Fear is not always protecting you from harm. Sometimes it is protecting your current understanding, your identity, your sense of certainty. Because to question a belief deeply is not just to examine an idea, it is to loosen something you have built yourself around, and that can feel like a loss, even if what is being protected is not entirely true. Imagine standing in a dark room for a long time. Your eyes adjust. You begin to feel comfortable. You learn the shape of the space in a limited way. It becomes familiar. Now imagine someone slowly opening a door, letting light enter. At first, it is uncomfortable, not because the light is harmful, but because it disrupts what you had adjusted to. Your perception changes, your sense of space shifts, the room is revealed more clearly, but the transition feels unsettling. Fear in this case is not protecting you from danger. It is protecting the comfort of the familiar, even if the familiar is incomplete. This is how fear can protect an illusion. An illusion is not always something false in an obvious way. It is often something partial, a limited understanding that feels complete because it has not been questioned deeply enough. And fear helps maintain that limit. It says, "Stay here. This is enough. Don't look further." Because looking further means letting go of something that once felt certain. This leads to the deeper question. If fear is protecting an illusion, then should it be ignored? The answer is more subtle. No, fear should not be ignored, because fear is real. The feeling itself matters, but what fear points to is not always what it claims. Fear signals that something is at stake, but it does not always tell you what that something is. Sometimes it is your safety, other times it is your identity. And learning the difference is where understanding begins. When fear arises in response to a real, immediate danger, it serves a clear purpose. It protects the body. It keeps you aware. It guides you away from harm. But when fear arises in response to an idea, a perspective, a realization, It may be protecting something less visible, a belief, a story, a version of yourself that feels stable, even if it is incomplete. And this is where the paradox resolves. Fear feels like it is always protecting truth, but sometimes it is protecting the illusion of certainty. And once you begin to see this, even slightly, something shifts. You no longer treat every fear as a signal to stop. You begin to listen more carefully, to ask, what is this fear protecting? Is it your safety, or is it your current way of seeing? And in that question, space appears, a small distance between the feeling of fear and the automatic reaction to it. And in that space, something new becomes possible. You can stay with the feeling without immediately turning away. You can explore gently without forcing yourself. You can allow understanding to unfold even if it feels unfamiliar, because you begin to realize that not all fear is a warning of danger. Sometimes it is the edge of growth, the boundary of what you have known so far. And crossing that boundary does not destroy you, it expands you. So the paradox resolves like this. Fear feels like it is protecting you from something harmful, but often it is protecting a limited understanding that feels safe. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that fear is false, but that it does not always point to danger. Sometimes it points to the edge of the illusion you have been living inside, and beyond that edge there is not destruction, there is clarity, quiet, unfamiliar at first, but more real than what came before. The truth that feels wrong when you hear it. There are moments when you hear something and it doesn't sit right, not because it is clearly false, but because it feels uncomfortable. Almost like your mind resists it before fully understanding it. You hear an idea, a perspective, a quiet truth, and something inside you immediately says, that can't be right. Even if you cannot explain why. This is where the paradox begins. Truth is expected to feel clear, stable, and correct. But sometimes, the closer something is to truth, the more it unsettles you. Think about a belief you once held strongly, something you were certain about, and then, at some point, you encountered a different perspective, a contradiction, a deeper explanation that challenged what you thought you knew. At first, it probably did not feel right. It may have felt confusing, uncomfortable, even wrong. But over time, as you stayed with it, something shifted. What once felt incorrect began to feel true. So the quiet question appears, if truth is real, why does it sometimes feel wrong at first? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Because truth does not always match your current understanding. Your mind builds a model of reality over time, a structure made of beliefs, experiences, assumptions, and patterns. This model helps you navigate the world. It gives you a sense of stability. But this model is not perfect. It is limited. And when something new appears, something that does not fit into that model, your mind does not immediately recognize it as truth. It recognizes it as a disruption. And disruption feels uncomfortable. It feels wrong. Not because the idea itself is false, but because it does not align with what you already believe. Imagine trying to fit a new piece into a puzzle that has already been completed. If the piece does not match the existing shape, it will feel incorrect, out of place, impossible to fit. But what if the puzzle itself is incomplete? What if the shape needs to change? In that case, the discomfort is not a sign that the piece is wrong. It is a sign that your current structure is too small. This is how truth can feel wrong. It does not always confirm what you already know. Sometimes it challenges it, and that challenge creates resistance, because your mind prefers familiarity. It prefers coherence. It prefers the feeling of knowing over the uncertainty of not knowing. So when a deeper truth appears, it does not immediately feel like clarity. It feels like confusion, like something is off, like something is being taken away. But what is actually happening is quieter than that. Your understanding is expanding, and expansion often feels like instability before it feels like clarity. This leads to a deeper question. If truth can feel wrong, then how can you trust what is true? The answer is subtle. You do not rely only on immediate feeling, because immediate feeling is shaped by what you already believe. Instead, you stay with the idea. You observe it. You allow it to settle. You let your understanding adjust slowly. Truth, when it is real, has a certain quality. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but it does not collapse under reflection. It does not require constant defense. It becomes clearer the more you sit with it, even if it takes time. This is different from something that is simply false. False ideas may feel convincing at first, but they often weaken when examined deeply. They rely on surface clarity, not depth. Truth is the opposite. It may begin as discomfort, but it deepens into quiet clarity. And once you begin to see this pattern, something shifts. You become less afraid of feeling wrong. You understand that discomfort is not always a sign to reject something. Sometimes it is a sign to look more closely, to question more deeply, to allow your current understanding to loosen. And in that space, something new can form. A wider perspective, a more flexible way of seeing, a deeper sense of reality, because you are no longer protecting what feels right at all costs. You are allowing truth to reshape what right means. This does not mean you accept every uncomfortable idea as truth. It means you do not reject it immediately. You give it space, you let it unfold, and slowly the difference becomes clearer between what only feels right and what actually is. So the paradox resolves like this. Truth is expected to feel correct the moment you hear it, but sometimes it feels wrong because it challenges the limits of your current understanding. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that truth is hidden, but that it often arrives quietly, disguised as discomfort. A gentle disturbance in what you thought was certain. And if you stay with it, if you do not turn away too quickly, that discomfort begins to soften. And what once felt wrong becomes something deeper, something clearer, something you cannot unsee. The awareness that cannot be seen. There is something present in every moment of your life, and yet you have never seen it directly. Not once. You have seen objects, faces, light, darkness. You have felt emotions, noticed thoughts, remembered the past, imagined the future. All of these have appeared clearly. But the one thing that allows all of this to appear remains invisible. This is where the paradox begins. Everything you experience can be observed, except the awareness that is doing the observing. Right now, you are aware. You are aware of these words, aware of your breathing, aware of the space around you, even aware of your own thoughts as they form and fade. But if you try to turn your attention toward the awareness itself, something strange happens. There is nothing to see, no shape, no color, no boundary. It does not appear as an object. It does not exist as something separate within your field of experience. And yet, without it, nothing else could be experienced at all. So the quiet question arises, if awareness cannot be seen, how do you know it exists? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. You do not know awareness as an object. You know it because everything else is known through it. It is not something you observe. It is the condition that makes observation possible. Imagine trying to shine a flashlight on itself. The beam can illuminate everything around it, but it cannot turn back and become the object it reveals. Awareness is like that. It illuminates thoughts, sensations, perceptions, but it cannot become one of them. Because the moment it becomes an object, it would no longer be the observer, and this is why it feels impossible to find. You are searching for awareness as if it is something separate from you, something you can point to, something you can see. But awareness is not separate from you. It is what you are before anything is seen. This can feel confusing at first, because the mind is used to understanding things by turning them into objects, something to look at, something to define, something to grasp. But awareness cannot be grasped in that way because it has no form, no edge, no fixed location. You cannot say it is inside your head because you can observe sensations in your head. You cannot say it is behind your eyes because you can observe the feeling of your eyes. Wherever you try to place it, it becomes something you are aware of, and therefore not the awareness itself. This creates the deeper question: if awareness cannot be found anywhere, does it actually exist? At first, this feels like a real possibility, because everything that exists, you assume, should be observable. But awareness challenges that assumption, because it exists differently. It does not exist as a thing. It exists as presence, as the open space in which all things appear. And you know it exists not by seeing it, but by recognizing that without it, nothing could be seen at all. Even the thought, maybe awareness does not exist, is something you are aware of, which means awareness is already there, quietly, unnoticed. This is the subtle resolution of the paradox. Awareness cannot be seen because it is not an object within experience. It is the field of experience itself. It is not hidden. It is simply not visible in the way you expect. And once you begin to sense this, even slightly, something shifts. The need to find yourself as an object begins to soften. The pressure to define who you are becomes lighter, because you begin to understand that what you truly are is not something that can be captured in a form, not a thought, not a label, not an image, but the silent presence in which all of these appear. This does not remove your identity. It places it in context. Your thoughts still exist, your emotions still move, your body still lives, but they are no longer the center. They are experiences within awareness, and awareness remains unchanged. It does not become anxious when thoughts become anxious. It does not become lost when identity feels uncertain. It simply observes, always here, always still. This is why moments of deep stillness feel so different. Because when the mind becomes quiet, even briefly, awareness becomes more noticeable. Not as something you see, but as the absence of everything that usually distracts you from it. A quiet openness, a sense of being, without needing to become anything. So the paradox resolves like this: awareness cannot be seen, found, or defined as an object, but it is the very thing that allows all objects to be known. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that awareness is hidden, but that it is so close, so constant, that you have been looking past it your entire life. It was never something you needed to find. It was the one thing that was always already here, the present that disappears when you look for it. There is a moment you are always trying to reach, the present. You hear it often. Be here now. Stay in the moment. This is all that exists. It sounds simple, almost obvious. Of course you are in the present. Where else could you be? And yet, the moment you try to find it, it slips away. This is where the paradox begins. The present is the only moment that exists, but the more you try to observe it directly, the more it seems to disappear. Right now, you may try to notice the present moment. You become aware of your breathing, the feeling of your body, the sound of silence, the space around you. For a brief second, it feels real, clear, grounded, but then something subtle happens. A thought appears. This is the present, and in that instant, you are no longer simply experiencing the present. You are thinking about it. The moment has already passed into memory, and what you are holding is a reflection, not the moment itself. This creates a quiet loop. You try to catch the present, but every attempt turns it into something slightly behind what is actually happening, like trying to grab water with your hands. The tighter you try to hold it, the more it slips through. So the question arises gently. If the present is always here, why can you never fully capture it? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Because the present is not something you can observe as an object. The moment you observe it, you create a small distance, a separation between the observer and the experience. And that separation turns the present into something that has already happened. Awareness moves faster than thought, but the recognition of awareness always comes after. This is similar to what you noticed before. The mind narrates, it labels, it tries to understand. But in doing so, it is always slightly behind, and the present remains just beyond that edge. Always here, but never held. Think about a simple experience. You hear a sound. Before you name it, before you think about it, it is pure, immediate, direct. But the moment you say, "That is a sound," you are already one step removed. The raw moment has already passed. What remains is interpretation. So the present is not something you can think your way into. It is something you can only be. And the moment you try to hold it as a concept, it becomes the past. This leads to the deeper question: if you cannot capture the present, can you ever truly be in it? The answer is quieter than expected. Yes, but not in the way you imagine. You cannot hold the present as an object, but you can stop moving away from it, because the only thing that takes you out of the present is the attempt to leave it. Thoughts about the past, thoughts about the future, even thoughts about the present itself. These create movement away from direct experience, not physically, but mentally. And that movement creates the feeling that the present is distant, but it is not. It is only being covered, like a clear sky hidden behind clouds. The sky does not go anywhere. The clouds simply pass in front of it. In the same way, the present does not disappear. Attention moves away from it. And once you begin to see this, something softens. You stop trying to find the present because you realize it was never lost. You stop chasing the moment because chasing creates distance. Instead, you begin to rest, quietly, gently, allowing whatever is here to be here, without needing to define it, without needing to hold it, without needing to turn it into something else. And in that stillness, something becomes clear. The present was never something you could grasp. It was something you were always inside, always moving through, always being. The paradox resolves like this. The present feels like something you must find, but every attempt to capture it turns it into the past. And yet, you never actually leave it, because all experience happens here, now, always. The present that disappears when you look for it does not vanish. It simply cannot be turned into an object. It can only be lived. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that the present is unreachable, but that it was never something you needed to reach. It was the ground beneath every step, the space within every moment, the quiet place you never truly leave, even when you think you have. The reality that needs you to exist. There is a world you believe exists independently of you. A world that continues when you sleep. A world that existed before you were born. A world that will remain after you are gone. This feels certain, solid, obvious. But if you look closely at your actual experience, something strange begins to appear. You have never experienced a reality without yourself in it, not once. Every sight, every sound, every thought, every memory, every feeling has always appeared within your awareness. There is no moment you can point to and say, "This existed for me," without me being there to experience it. And this is where the paradox begins. Reality feels independent of you, but the only reality you ever know is the one that appears within your awareness. Think about it gently. Right now, the room exists. The world exists. Everything feels external, separate, out there. But how do you know it exists? Through experience, through perception, through awareness. Without awareness, there is no experience of reality at all. No color, no sound, no form, no world. So the quiet question arises, does reality exist without you, or does the reality you know depend on you to appear? At first, this question feels uncomfortable, because it seems to challenge something deeply held, the idea that the world is completely separate, completely independent, completely unaffected by your presence. But stay with it, because something more subtle begins to reveal itself. This is not about denying the existence of a world beyond you. It is about recognizing the nature of the world you actually experience. There may be a reality beyond perception, but you never experience that directly. You only experience reality as it appears within awareness. And in that sense, your experience of reality depends entirely on your presence. Imagine turning off a light in a room. The objects may still be there, but for you, the room disappears into darkness. Not because it no longer exists, but because it no longer appears in your experience. Your awareness is like that light. It does not create the objects themselves, but it allows them to appear. Without it, there is nothing to experience. This leads to a deeper question. If reality only appears through your awareness, then what is the relationship between you and the world? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. You are not separate from the reality you experience. You are part of the process that makes it appear. The world, as you know it, is not just out there. It is a relationship between what exists and your awareness of it. Without awareness, there is no experienced reality. Without reality, there is nothing to be aware of. They arise together. This does not mean you are creating the world in a magical or absolute sense. It means the world you live in, the one you see, hear, feel, and understand, cannot exist without your awareness participating in it. And this is where the paradox deepens. Reality feels like something you are inside of, but your awareness is what makes that reality visible. So are you inside reality, or is reality inside your awareness? The answer is not one or the other. It is both. They are intertwined. You cannot separate the experience from the experiencer. And once you begin to see this, even slightly, something shifts. The world stops feeling like something completely distant, completely external, completely separate from you, and you stop feeling like a small observer trapped inside it. Instead, There is a sense of connection, a quiet understanding that what you experience as reality is not something you are disconnected from. You are involved, present, essential to the experience itself. This does not make you the center of everything, but it means you are not absent from it either. Your awareness is not a passive observer. It is part of the unfolding. This can feel unsettling at first, because it removes the idea of a completely fixed, objective experience that exists exactly the same way for everyone at all times. But it can also feel deeply grounding, because it means your experience matters, your presence matters. The way you see, feel, and understand the world is not insignificant. It is part of reality as it appears. And in that sense, reality needs you. Not to exist in an absolute sense, but to be experienced at all. So the paradox resolves like this. Reality feels like something that exists completely independent of you, but the only reality you ever know exists through your awareness. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that the world depends on you in a physical sense, but that your experience of reality cannot exist without you. You are not just inside reality, you are part of the condition that allows it to appear. The reality that needs you to exist is not separate from you. It is the world as it lives within your awareness, always present, always appearing, only here because you are here to see it. The mind that creates the problem it solves. There is a strange pattern that repeats quietly in your life. A problem appears. The mind reacts. It begins to think, to analyze, to search for a solution. And eventually, a sense of resolution comes. Relief, understanding, control. It feels like the mind has done something important. It feels like it has helped. But if you slow down and look more closely, something subtle begins to emerge. The problem may not have existed in the way it first appeared. This is where the paradox begins. The mind feels like it solves problems, but often it is the one that created them in the first place. Think about something simple. A thought appears. What if something goes wrong? At first, it is just a thought, a possibility, a brief idea passing through. But the mind does not let it pass. It begins to follow it. What if this happens, and then that happens, and then everything becomes difficult? And suddenly, the body responds, tension rises, emotion forms, the imagined situation begins to feel real. Now there is a problem, not in the external world, but inside experience. And so the mind begins to solve it. It reassures, it plans, it tries to find certainty, and when it does, even partially, there is relief. But look closely. The entire cycle began with a thought that did not need to become a problem until the mind treated it as one. This leads to the deeper question. If the mind can turn a simple thought into a problem and then solve it, what is actually happening? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. The mind is not just responding to problems. It is also generating them, not intentionally, not in a harmful way, but as part of how it functions. The mind is designed to anticipate, to predict, to imagine possibilities. This is useful. It allows you to prepare, to learn, to avoid danger. But it also means the mind can create situations that are not happening right now. And when it treats those imagined situations as real, they become experienced as problems. And once something feels like a problem, the mind cannot ignore it. It moves into action, trying to fix, control, resolve. And when it succeeds, even briefly, it feels like it has done something valuable. But the quiet truth is this: The problem and the solution often arise from the same process. The mind creates tension and then releases it. It creates uncertainty and then tries to restore certainty. It creates a question and then searches for an answer. This creates a loop, a continuous movement of creating and resolving. And because the resolution feels good, the process continues without being fully questioned. This does not mean all problems are imagined. There are real situations, real challenges, real events that require attention and action. But many of the problems you feel most intensely are not happening right now. They exist in thought, in anticipation, in interpretation. And once you begin to see this, something shifts. You start to notice the moment a problem is being formed. Not after it has fully taken shape, but at the beginning. A thought appears, a possibility, a question, and instead of immediately following it, you pause, you observe. And in that observation, something interesting happens. The thought loses some of its power. It remains a thought, but it does not automatically become a problem, because a problem requires engagement. It requires belief. It requires the mind to treat the thought as something that must be solved. Without that engagement, the thought can pass, like a cloud that was never turned into a storm. This is where the paradox begins to resolve. The mind creates problems when it turns thoughts into realities that must be controlled, and it solves them by restoring a sense of order. But the deeper understanding is quieter. Not every thought needs to become a problem. Not every possibility needs to be solved. And once you begin to see this, even slightly, the cycle loosens. The mind still thinks, it still imagines, it still creates ideas, but you are no longer fully inside the loop. You begin to stand slightly outside it, watching, noticing, allowing, and in that space, something calm begins to appear. Because you are no longer solving every problem the mind creates, you are recognizing that some of them never needed to exist in the first place. So the paradox resolves like this. The mind feels like it is solving problems, but often it is solving the very problems it created through its own thinking. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that the mind is working against you, but that it is constantly trying to help in a way that sometimes creates unnecessary loops. Loops of tension and release, question and answer, problem and solution. And when you see the loop, you are no longer trapped inside it. You are simply aware of it. And that awareness is where the cycle begins to quiet down. The certainty that is built on doubt. There is a feeling you trust more than most. Certainty. The sense that something is clear, stable, and true. A belief you hold without hesitation. A conclusion that feels solid enough to stand on. I know this. This is how it is. This is true. Magia. Certainty feels like the end of questioning. But if you look more closely, something unexpected begins to appear. Certainty does not remove doubt. It is built on it. This is where the paradox begins. The more certain you feel about something, the more that certainty depends on the quiet presence of doubt beneath it. Think about how certainty forms. At some point, there was uncertainty, a question, a lack of clarity, a space where you did not know, and from that space, your mind searched. It compared ideas, it weighed possibilities, it chose a conclusion that felt stable enough to hold on to. And that conclusion became certainty. But what happened to the doubt? It did not disappear. It was simply covered, hidden beneath the structure of belief, because certainty is not the absence of doubt. It is the mind's way of stabilizing itself in the presence of it. This leads to the deeper question. If certainty is built on doubt, then how stable is it really? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Certainty feels solid, but it is always supported by something that is not fully resolved. The mind seeks certainty because it prefers clarity over uncertainty. It wants to rest, to stop questioning, to feel like it has reached an answer. But beneath that answer, there is always the possibility that it could be incomplete, that something could be different, that something could change. And this possibility is doubt. Not always visible, not always conscious, but always present in some form. This is why certainty can sometimes feel fragile. Even when you are convinced of something, a small question can disturb it. A new perspective can challenge it. A single contradiction can create tension. Because certainty is not a permanent state, it is a temporary resolution, a way of organizing understanding so that the mind can feel stable. Imagine building a structure on the ground. It feels firm, secure, but the ground itself is not perfectly still. There are small shifts, movements you do not notice most of the time. Certainty is like that structure. It feels stable, but it rests on a foundation that is always capable of shifting. And that foundation is uncertainty. This does not mean certainty is useless. It serves an important function. Without it, you would be constantly questioning everything, unable to act, unable to decide, unable to move forward. Certainty allows you to function, to trust, to engage with the world. But the deeper understanding is this: certainty is not absolute. It is a practical tool, a temporary resting place in the flow of understanding. And once you begin to see this, something shifts. You stop treating certainty as something that must never be questioned. You begin to hold it more lightly, more gently. You allow space for doubt to exist without immediately trying to eliminate it, because you begin to understand that doubt is not always a problem. It is part of the process. It is what allows new understanding to emerge. Without doubt, there would be no reason to question. Without questioning, there would be no growth. So certainty and doubt are not opposites in the way they seem. They are connected, interdependent. Certainty arises from doubt, and doubt remains beneath certainty, quietly, waiting. Not as a threat, but as a possibility. And this leads to the quiet resolution of the paradox. Certainty feels like a final answer, but it is actually a moment of balance between what is known and what is still unknown. And that balance is always changing. The danger is not having certainty. The danger is believing it is permanent, because when certainty becomes rigid, it stops allowing new understanding. It closes the door to change. But when certainty is held lightly, it becomes flexible, open, able to evolve. So the paradox resolves like this. Certainty feels like the absence of doubt, but it is actually built on a foundation where doubt still exists. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that certainty is false, but that it is never final. It is a moment of rest in a process that is always moving, always unfolding, always capable of becoming something deeper. And once you see this, certainty no longer feels like something you must protect at all costs. It becomes something you can use without being controlled by it. The ending that never truly ends. There is something you believe about endings, that they are final. A moment closes, a chapter finishes, a story reaches its last page, and with that, something feels complete, done, over. You feel it in small ways. A conversation ends, a day finishes, a phase of life fades behind you, and in larger ways too. Relationships end, identities change, time moves forward, carrying everything with it. It feels like a line being drawn, a clear boundary between what was and what is no longer. But if you look closely, something strange begins to appear. Endings do not disappear, they transform. This is where the paradox begins. An ending feels like a conclusion, but it never truly ends. It continues in ways you do not immediately see. Think about a simple example. You finish reading a book. The story ends. The final sentence is written. The characters no longer move forward. But is it really over? The memory of the story remains. The emotions it created continue to exist within you. The ideas it introduced begin to shape how you see other things. The book has ended, but its presence has not. It continues in a quieter form. The same is true for everything. A conversation ends, but its meaning stays with you. A moment passes, but it becomes part of your memory. A version of yourself fades, but it influences the person you are becoming. Nothing simply disappears, it changes form. This leads to the deeper question. If endings do not truly end, then what does it mean for something to be over? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. An ending is not the disappearance of something, it is the transition of that thing into a different kind of existence. From direct experience into memory, from action into influence, from presence into meaning. And this transition is so quiet that you rarely notice it. You feel the loss of the moment, but you do not always see how it continues. Imagine a wave reaching the shore. It rises, moves, and then breaks. The form disappears, the movement ends, but the water does not vanish. It returns to the ocean. The shape is gone, but the substance remains. Endings work the same way. The form ends, but the effect continues. And this is why endings can feel so powerful. Because they are not simple. They carry something forward, even when you believe they are complete. This becomes even clearer when you look at your own life. Think about who you were years ago. That version of you no longer exists in the same form. Your thoughts are different. Your understanding has changed. Your identity has evolved. That you has ended, but has it truly disappeared? Or is it still present in everything you have become? Your habits, your reactions, your way of seeing the world, all of these are shaped by what came before. The past has ended, but it continues within you. And this is the quiet truth. Nothing you experience is ever fully erased. It changes, it integrates, it becomes part of the flow of your life. This can feel unsettling at first, because it means there is no absolute closure in the way you imagine. No clean break where something is completely gone. But it can also feel deeply comforting, because it means nothing is ever truly lost. Every moment, every experience, every version of you leaves something behind, something subtle, something that continues to shape what comes next. This does not trap you in the past, it connects you to it in a way that is alive, not fixed, not limiting, but flowing. And once you begin to see this, something shifts. You stop expecting endings to bring complete disappearance. You begin to understand them as transformations, moments where one form closes and another begins. Even if that beginning is quiet, even if it is not immediately visible, this changes how you experience change itself. It becomes less about loss and more about movement, less about finality and more about continuation. So the paradox resolves like this. An ending feels like something has completely finished, but nothing truly disappears. It continues in another form, another layer, another expression. And the truth you were never meant to know is not that endings are illusions, but that they are incomplete. They are not the final point. They are the turning point, the moment where something visible fades and something invisible begins. And you are living inside that continuous unfolding, where nothing fully ends and everything quietly becomes something else, the truth you were never meant to hold. There is a feeling that has been building quietly beneath everything you have heard, a sense that something important is just out of reach. As if there is a final truth, something complete, something that, once understood, will make everything clear, a truth you can finally hold. But if you look closely, if you follow every paradox, every shift in perspective, every quiet realization, something unexpected begins to appear. There is no final truth you can keep. This is where the last paradox begins. You search for truth as if it is something solid, something you can grasp, define, and carry with you. But the deeper truth is not something that can be held. It is something that dissolves the moment you try to contain it. Think about everything you have explored. The observer cannot be seen. Thoughts arise before you choose them. The present cannot be captured. Reality shifts with attention. Identity is not fixed. Memory is not stable. Control is not where you thought it was. Each of these reveals something deeper, but none of them give you a final object to hold on to. Instead, they take something away: certainty, fixed identity, absolute control, a stable, unchanging reality. And at first, this can feel unsettling, because it feels like something is being lost. But stay with it, because something quieter begins to emerge. When everything that can be held begins to loosen, what remains? Awareness, the same awareness that has been present through every thought, every realization, every moment of confusion and clarity. It does not need to hold truth. It is the space in which truth appears. And this leads to the deeper question: if truth cannot be held, then what is it? By the end of this paradox, the answer becomes clearer. Truth is not an object. It is not a conclusion. It is not a final answer waiting to be reached. It is a way of seeing, a recognition that shifts how you relate to everything. And because it is a way of seeing, it cannot be captured as a fixed idea. The moment you turn it into a belief, a statement, something solid, it becomes limited. It becomes another concept. And concepts are always smaller than what they try to describe. This is why the deepest truths often feel simple and yet impossible to fully explain. Because they are not meant to be held in words. They are meant to be noticed, lived, experienced, and then allowed to remain open, like the sky. You can look at it, you can experience it, you can describe it in many ways, but you cannot take it with you. You cannot hold it in your hands, and if you try to reduce it to a single idea, you lose its vastness. Truth works the same way. It is not something you collect. It is something you remain in contact with, moment by moment, without needing to close it, without needing to turn it into certainty. This is why the search for a final answer often feels endless, because the mind is looking for something it can hold. But what it is searching for is not meant to be held. It is meant to be recognized again and again, in different forms, in different moments, always fresh, always unfolding. And once you begin to see this, something softens deeply. The need to reach a final conclusion fades. The pressure to understand everything completely begins to dissolve, because you realize that understanding is not a destination, it is a movement, a quiet, ongoing opening. And in that opening, there is peace. Not because everything is known, but because nothing needs to be forced into a final shape. So the paradox resolves like this. You search for truth as something you can hold, but the deepest truth cannot be contained. It slips away the moment you try to define it completely, and yet it is always present, always available, not as an answer, but as a way of seeing what is already here. And the truth you were never meant to know is not hidden from you. It is simply not something you were meant to possess. It is something you move with, something you notice, something you return to again and again, without ever needing to hold it still. And now, you are back where you began. But something is different, not because you have found a final answer, but because something has quietly shifted in how you see. The world may look the same, your thoughts may still move, time may still pass, but there is a subtle awareness now that what you experience is not as fixed as it once seemed. That reality is deeper than its surface. That identity is more fluid than it appears. That truth is not something to capture, but something to gently recognize. And maybe that is enough. Not to solve reality, not to escape it, but to move through it with a little more openness, a little less resistance, a little more curiosity. So tonight, as you rest, as your mind slowly quiets, you don't need to hold on to anything you've heard. You don't need to remember every idea. You don't need to force understanding. Just let it settle. Let it fade into the background, like a distant echo, because the truth was never something you needed to carry. It was something you were already inside. And if this journey made you pause, even for a moment, if it made you see something slightly differently, then take a quiet second and consider subscribing, not as a habit, but as a continuation, because this space we are building, these thoughts, these explorations, they only exist because you are here to experience them, and there is always something deeper waiting, just beyond what you think you know. Until next time, stay aware.